Guys on Sactown Sports.
Time to bust out a little Slater-aid. Nice enough to join us from The Athletic. He was covering the Warriors last night, covers the NBA at large for, of course, The Athletic. Joins us once a week. Anthony Slater. How are you today, Slates?
I am getting a little tired, It's game 6 of a series. If there's a chance I got to make a third trip to Houston come Saturday. So
was that what kept the Warriors from ever getting going last night? Were they also a little weary?
Maybe. They sure acted like it. It looked like preseason effort at times.
Yeah.
It was a punt of a game, which included at halftime they were like, go play for 5 minutes, and if you don't make a run, we'll just pull the plug. I don't know. It's kind of they had given themselves the cushion to do that, but that's a dangerous game to play.
Mm. Hey, Slates, Jimmy Butler. Before we get to the Kings talk, Jimmy Butler didn't look like he was moving well yesterday. Maybe re-aggravated it. What can you tell us about him going forward? Yeah,
I think he estimates it would have been about a 1 to 2 week absence in the regular season normally. He landed hard not only just on the pelvic but the left side, and I was talking with him actually after it would have been game 4 in the locker room, and he was explaining to me, he was trying to show me like he can't lift his left leg fully up like in a running like stride type pattern. But he played well that night, even though he was probably hurting even worse in game 4. He was scooting around the court, but he does play this like bully ball power tricky style that's not like built off athleticism. So there are ways I think he can still be effective. Again, it was 12 of 12 at the line in that game. He was still pretty good defensively. And I'm talking about game 4. Game 5, to me, I think he just kind of took the cues of the entire team, and it's like it almost turned into a rest night for all of them. But I don't like. He said he felt a little bit better, like physically felt a little bit better. I just think mentally they weren't all there.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea? Have you heard anything about who might end up being on Doug Christie's staff, with Doug getting officially introduced tomorrow?
No, I think that's like, the next step of this process. I think it's going to be a very refreshed staff. I don't think many, coaches from last season, I can say that, I don't think will be around. Obviously some of them have already left. But I wonder if maybe Leandro Barbosa sticks around. I know he had a year left on his deal. I wonder if they want to go get a former head coach, right? That's a lot. Oftentimes with a young, fresher head coach, you want somebody who's been, in battles before, as in the head seat, and who would that be? We'll see. I wonder about a guy like Bobby Jackson, maybe, if you want to kind of, revamp or, kind of continue along this like Kings lineage. So there are names, but we're just heading towards that part of the calendar where, players, coaches, everybody starts to reshuffle, which is a summer thing.
Mm-hmm. Anthony Slater joining us. Doug set to be formally introduced tomorrow. How do you think the hiring of Doug will impact certain players, namely Domantas Sabonis, going into this offseason here?
Well, to me, I think it's a sign that it's going to be relatively status quo roster-wise with the big pieces, who clearly had a voice in, keeping Doug around. And it seems like they're going to, almost, again, we've talked about it week after week about just like the contract situations and the fact that in some ways I do kind of think they're stuck is too strong a term, because like Domantas Sabonis is still obviously a great player, but I just think like you'll probably see Sabonis here next year. You'll probably see Levine here. I think DeRozan to me is the bigger question mark, but I think some of those main guys that know they're likely to be here next year voiced desire to have Doug Christie around, and he will be the head coach. So that to me, that's a sign of at least temporary status quo.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're seeing it the way I've been looking at it when you have Scott Perry talking about, as close to a quote as I can recall, this current roster, we need a true point guard. To me, that sounds like that's pretty much what they're doing, right? They're planning on having everybody back, maybe some, adjustments around the edges, but they're going to add a point guard probably to last year's core and hope that is what pushes them to more wins.
Yeah, because if you're doing a tear down rebuild, you're not worried about a specific position to complement what else is already here, because you're basically planning on not having a lot else that's here, and you're just like, I agree with you. It doesn't sound like anybody here, Doug Christie, Scott Perry, Vivek, like nobody's planning some philosophical overhaul or massive change of direction. It's a refresh. It's a refining around the edges of the rotation, and a hope by them that leads to more wins next season in a playoff spot. And again, they weren't that far away from the playoffs. I do think the limitations of their core players in the roster still seem like they remain, but we've seen it in the past, like smart, smaller, rotation fits can sometimes unlock bigger things. And if suddenly they get the right point guard, maybe that'll just like unlock level. To me, who they're building their team around, Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis, like you need to be a top 8 offense in the NBA. You need to get back to where like you run teams out of the building offensively and try to survive defensively, which is kind of, in their best year of this era, right? That first Mike Brown era, that's what they were. They were the number 1 offense and, I think 17th defense that year. But they still won 48, 49 games, whatever it was. So, like, that's what they've got to be. And to do that, I just think they need to find the right fit offensively, particularly at the point guard position.
All right, Slates. I'm hearing that, you guys are talking about, making some tweaks, maybe adding a point guard. Any chance that they go big fish hunting with some of the names? And I'm not including Giannis. Giannis out of the mix. But maybe
John Morant
or Zion or somebody like that. Any chance of that?
I think like Zion will probably, and this is more speculation, but I think Zion will be more potentially available than like, a Ja. And again, you get Zion, not only you got to send a lot of salary out the door, or is it Ja, really any of these guys, you got to send a lot of salary out the door, but like Zion and Domantas Sabonis is an odd fit. So you probably would be completely rechanging who you are. I think they'll try to be in the conversations, but to me, they don't. If you're talking about a really appealing, bigger piece out there, to me, they don't really have the package. They don't really. I mean, maybe if Keegan Murray's on the table, that's your young player. You throw some future picks, but I don't know that they should necessarily be in the market for, hey, go try to get a Kevin Durant to finish off some contender that you've already built. Like, no, like this. I would already question the idea that they're continuing to try to like kind of win now. I'd be, I would probably be more of the suggestion of trying to quietly rebuild. But, again, if a Ja Morant became available, sure, I think a lot of teams would make a call, but I'm just not sure the Kings have that type of package to go get him.
Slate, speaking of Keegan Murray at that Scott Perry press conference, somebody asked, and I forget who it was, I apologize, but somebody asked about Keegan and Scott Perry. It was interesting. It may mean nothing, but it did catch my ear. First, he said, I'm not worried about Keegan. He'll be all right. And then that's right where he went into his whole thing about, I'm going to give everybody mirrors. So, we really don't know what. Obviously, with Monty, Keegan was like hands off. We don't know how Scott Perry feels about him. So not that you would know that, but my question is, based on your conversations with coaches and scouts, what is your sense of how people around the league see Keegan Murray? Is that a fair question? Do you have a sense of that?
I think the ceiling on Keegan Murray has been lowered. I think there were anyone who thought, hey, he's heading towards all-star territory. And, we all know there were people within the Kings that was their hope, right? That was their dream after his rookie season. Like, hey, this is going to be like the next all-star, like franchise face type guy. I think that expectation by most rational people around the league has been lowered. But there's still a lot of people that think he's a very good winning basketball player. He's really up to, I never thought he'd be this good defensively. He's versatile. He can guard, almost every position. He guards well. He guards attentively. You talked to coaches on the staff last year. They within a sea of, bad defensive personnel, he was a bright spot. Now his shot has kind of left him, to the degree. And, how much of that do you blame on the defensive effort he had to give every night, the way he's bulked up? How much would you blame on just like his continued lessening spot in the offensive pecking order? I would say the decision to signed DeRozan probably impacted him more than anyone. There was, you look at their starting lineup last year, especially when they had Malik Monk starting and Fox. Like, there was a point where he was the fifth offensive option. Like, that's, for a guy who at one point it felt like they were trying to elevate into, the next two-way star in Sacramento, to then by year 3 be, demoting him into the fifth offensive option in some lineups he's playing out there. Like, that clearly was difficult for him to deal with. And I can remember even talking to him. He's so polite, and like, he wasn't saying it in a, super negative way, but he was admitting that, like, that, that type of Harrison Barnes role that he was put in, was kind of impacting some of his shooting percentages and the way he was getting the ball in the court. So I don't know. I think everybody needs to look in the mirror. I also think the way they built the roster around him, like, people need to look in the mirror about that one too.
Yes. Well said. Thanks, Slates. We appreciate it. Enjoy the game. You won't be at the press conference tomorrow, will you? Tomorrow morning?
I'm actually thinking about maybe trying to go, like, on my way, like, trying to loop it into going down to the Bay Area for Game 6.
Okay.
So that's not a promise, by the way.
It's right on the way. It is right on the way.
It is. I'll try. I wish it was like, if it was more noon, it would be perfect. But
all right,
whatever.
All right. Yeah. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, fellas.
All right, Slates.